Welcome to Midweek Mysteries, and thank you all for being here. As always, I am your host, Nick Ryan. If you're new to the show, Midweek Mysteries is a shorter version of our regular Sunday episodes, where we enjoy giving a personal shout-out to our newest supporters, so please be sure to tune in. If you're interested in supporting us, please consider sharing, reviewing, and subscribing to the show. And if you'd like to take the next step, please visit us at patreon.com/paranormalmysteries or at buymeacoffee.com/paranormal, where you can make a one-time donation. Your support in any form makes the show possible. And if you've encountered the paranormal and you'd like to share your story, please email me at paranormalmysteriesPodcast@gmail.com. All experiences, no matter how big or small, are always welcome. Now let's see what today's storytellers have to say. Today's first midweek mystery comes to us from Alex. Alex's story is called The Fae. Alex says, I have two stories, and I will try and make them both short. The first one is something that technically didn't just involve me. When I was in middle school, I lived in the forest, and only had about 2 neighbors. Behind my house was a deep forest, with coyotes and raccoons, and all that. I used to go out there and play, as I love the outdoors. One day when I was playing, I heard wind chimes. I figured they were just from a home. However, when I went out the second time, the forest went still before the wind chimes played. No wind, no birds, nothing. The wind chimes always came from the sky as well. They brought a feeling with them as well, like feeling frozen in time and space, and after they chimed, I would feel tired and dizzy, and a little scared. Eventually, I just learned to flee my yard and run home when I heard them. Fast forward to now, I have a boyfriend who believes in the Fae. The reason for this is that he heard the wind chimes too. In fact, he was the one to bring it up, and he said that he would hear it from the sky, and it sounded inhuman. My second story is about a first-hand experience. About 1.5 years ago, I was learning how to become better at meditating. I have ADHD, so it's really hard to focus on my breathing, but I managed to put myself in a deep relaxed state. This meant that if someone wanted to bring me out of my state, they would have to physically touch me, or clap, or do something startling. I remember feeling something on my thigh. I can't really describe what it felt like, besides the sensation of warmth and electricity, but not painful electricity. It wasn't like a shock. My eyes opened and I saw a small glowing form perched on my inner thigh. I didn't know what to do, so we just stared at each other for a couple of seconds, in dead silence. And then I said hello. This may have startled them, because they flew away and under my dresser and disappeared. I know that I wasn't imagining it, because my brain and my body were somewhere else, and I was not on any medication that would cause me to hallucinate. I wasn't a super huge believer in the Fae before this, but I am now. Our next listener story comes to us from Becky. Becky's story is called Voice Imitator. Becky says, Hi Nick, I recently discovered your podcast on Spotify, and I wanted to share one of my experiences with you. This took place back in 2017. I had just graduated high school and was visiting my best friend Brittany. She lived with her boyfriend, his brother, and their cousin. The first few nights were pretty normal and were a lot of fun. I ended up cutting my visit short though, because of what I am about to tell you. All of the boys had left for the night, giving Brittany and I a girls' night. Midway through the night, Brittany wasn't feeling well and decided that she wanted to go lay down upstairs, and I continued to sit on the couch and watch TV. About an hour had passed by, and I could hear Brittany yell from upstairs, "What do you want?" To which I replied, "Huh? What are you talking about?" And she yelled back down, "You said, Brittany, come here. I heard you say it from Drew's room." At this point, I was confused, and I yelled back to her, "I'm downstairs. I didn't call you." And at this point, her voice sounds irritated, and she said, "Stop messing around. I heard you in Drew's room. I know you're in there." So I stand up and I walk up the stairs to show her that I was indeed downstairs the entire time. When I get to the top, I look in her bedroom at her and say, "See, I've been downstairs." Upon her seeing me, her face went pale, and she was beyond terrified. She said, "I heard you say, Brittany, come here from Drew's room. I swear I did." And at this point, I turned my head to look into Drew's room. The door was open, and all I could see was pitch black. I started to feel very uneasy, and I looked back at Brittany and said, "Why don't we just go back downstairs and hang out?" She jumped off the bed and nodded, and we started to walk back down. When about halfway, I could hear clear as day my voice come from Drew's room, and it said, "Brittany, come here." My heart sank, and I felt as if I was going to throw up. Brittany and I ran down the rest of the stairs, and I grabbed my keys and we left, and didn't return until the boys came back home. They of course did not believe us and laughed the whole thing off when we told them what happened. I left that same night, but while packing my things, I did one last walk upstairs and looked back into Drew's room, and I felt that same uneasy feeling that something was in there. Thank you for reading my story, and hopefully one of your listeners may know what that thing could have been. Have a great day. Our next listener story comes to us from Tori. Tori's story is called Paranormal Activity in Cottonwood, Arizona. Tori says, "Hello. First, let me tell you I've always been bored with podcasts and never understood everyone's obsession until I stumbled across yours, and now I completely understand. I'm currently in the beginning of your Season 4 episodes, and was going to wait until I was completely caught up before I shared this story with you, but recently as I was driving through the country of North Carolina, listening to one of your episodes, while simultaneously reliving one of my own paranormal encounters, you read a story from another listener named Tori, and I got the sudden urge I just needed to write this email as soon as I got home. This is kind of a long story, so please bear with me. First, some backstory. Growing up, my mom and her best friend, whom I referred to as an aunt, were very active in New Age beliefs and practices. It was commonly understood that my aunt was psychic and often did readings for people. My mom and I would often live very close to my aunt, or even shared a house with her pretty much my whole childhood. There always seemed to be strange occurrences wherever we lived, and we moved often. When I was about 17, my mom and aunt moved from Asheville, North Carolina, which was a very New Age sort of town, to Arizona. I decided to live with my aunt for a while in Cottonwood, as my mom moved to another town not far off. We lived in a small older house that we rented off a quiet side street. When I moved in, my aunt immediately shared with me that there were active spirits in the house, but there was nothing malevolent. She also shared that when she first went to rent the place, the landlords had told her that the original owner was an elderly woman who had passed away in the house. It didn't take long for me to start experiencing some of these strange activities. Sometimes I'd hear loud scratching sounds outside my window, like something large was climbing up the walls outside, much larger than any squirrel or lizard could be. I'd often lay there terrified that the source of the sound would peek its head over to look in my window. Or I'd be sitting in the kitchen alone eating, watching the TV above the refrigerator, and the TV would just shut off out of nowhere, only to turn back on a few minutes later. One of the kids of my aunt's coworkers was over one evening and had asked who the older woman was that walked by the window, one of course no one else saw. One night in particular, I remember being woken up from a scream in the middle of the night, followed by my aunt barging in my room and slamming the door. She said she was just going into the kitchen, but didn't want to turn the light on just to get a drink, and walked through a spirit. She said it was darker than darkness, and a good bit taller than herself, and she only noticed it seconds before she walked through, and felt the coldness through her body. It had startled her so much that she just bolted. The wildest night of supernatural events happened a few months after I had moved in. A few musician friends of mine from the local high school came over later one evening, and we decided that since it was still very warm out and a full moon, we'd sit out in my backyard, and I'd listen to them jam away a bit. It was pretty late when they stopped playing, and we started commenting on how eerie the moon looked, so full and casting that yellowy glow around my yard. I started sharing with them some of the occurrences in the house, and they started sharing some of their own experiences living in such an old desert town, when we started hearing noises around us. I can't even describe what it sounded like, movement of some sort, but it was quick, sudden sounds, and moving all around us. One friend started to sound nervous as he kept asking, "What is that? Where is it coming from?" I felt nervous that if these local kids didn't recognize it, then it must be something not normal. And suddenly I caught a glimpse of something move by the tree to my right. As I shouted, "Look!" it was like a split second of seeing this tiny thing by the bottom of the tree. It was so quick, but I remember it so vividly. The first thing that comes to my mind can only be described as a gnome. It sounds crazy, I know, but it's the only thing I can think of to describe it. It was small, very low to the base of the tree, and all I saw was what looked like a little head popping out the side of the trunk, like peeking around. But within a second it was gone, and none of my friends saw it. We started chuckling at how spooked out we were getting, but tried to ignore these sounds and just kept talking. After a few more minutes, I noticed that it looked like the moon was getting brighter somehow, almost like the clouds had moved away from it, but I don't remember seeing any coverage that night. Suddenly I heard my friend go, do you see that? I looked over to where he was looking, and saw on the larger tree, which was maybe 12 feet from us, the silhouette of a figure clearly forming on the trunk of the tree. It was shockingly crisp, like it was being etched out of the moonlight. One of my friends started getting slightly hysterical, yelling, "Oh my God, as this figure was clearly forming on the tree. It was a woman. It looked like her hair was in a bun from the side view, and in a gown. I was terrified, even as used to the bizarre unexplained as I was. We watched it get brighter and crisper, our breaths held in our throats. I had the strongest urge to touch it, to see it closer. I slowly stood up and crept my way towards it. I could hear my friends warning me behind me, and their own panic, but I just needed to go to it. As I moved closer, it started to fade, and by the time I was within finger's reach, it looked like nothing, just the glow of the moonlight. I called back to my friends to see if they could still see it from their view, but they agreed. It didn't look like a distinct figure anymore. By this time it was well after midnight, and my friends decided that they had had enough. As they were leaving, they commented on how this night had been the strangest night of their lives, and they never came back. It was a few weeks later when I saw her again. To get to my bathroom, you have to cross a hallway, where the study would be on my left, and the entrance to my room was on the right. I was leaving the kitchen to use the restroom, and as I entered the hall, I froze. I saw from the corner of my eye, clear as day, a woman in a white gown. The light was off in my room, and it was nighttime, so it was very dark in there, but she glowed. She floated about a foot off the floor, at the base of my bed, almost in my doorway. I screamed and ran into the bathroom and slammed the door. I yelled for my aunt, and refused to leave the bathroom until she walked me out. I told her what I had seen, and she just said, "Oh, well, I figured she'd make herself known sooner or later." It took a while before I could sleep in my room again. We moved back to North Carolina a few months later. I had only been in that house for maybe 6 months, but I was ironically very sad to leave. The Arizona desert was so different than the East Coast. It was magical somehow, and I loved that so many people out there were open to the paranormal, or had experienced their own encounters. I'm in my 30s now, living in North Carolina, but I still strongly ache for the desert and all of its mysteries. I know this is really long, and I thank you for taking the time to read it. Hearing your podcasts make me feel like I'm a part of that community again, and I hope you continue to make many more episodes. Tori. Our next story comes from J-Man. J-Man says, "Hi. A lot of people I share my experiences with love to hear them. Here's the one that made my friend a believer. I had a good friend in high school that I used to hang out with a lot. He was that friend in high school that had a car, and we would ask for rides home after school. He became that friend that always came over to hang out. He was a good guy and came from a good family, but I know for sure that he didn't believe in the paranormal. He was too much of a skeptic. He was a senior about to go to college and study criminal justice. My parents didn't mind him coming over. My parents didn't care who I hung out with, as long as they knew who they were, but my friend had a weird habit. He would never knock on my front door or ring the bell. He would always knock on my window. We would always tell him to knock on the door, and it was okay if he came around to hang out, but still he would always knock on the window, and because of this, I would always leave the left side of my curtain pulled open so I could see outside if he were to come over. One day it was only me and my mom at the house. My dad was at work, and we were going to barbecue at home, so we went to the store, which was only one light down the road. I waited in the car as my mom went to go grab a few things in the grocery store. That's when my friend called me. He asked me what was going on that day and what we were doing. As I explained everything to him about the barbecue, my mom gets back in the car with the few things that we needed, and we headed back home. When I finished explaining that I went to the store with my mom, my friend then says, "Oh, okay. Well, come outside. Let's hang out. I'm outside." I again said to him, "I told you I'm at the store with my mom, but we're headed home." My friend then says, "How are you at the store? I just saw you look out your window." I told him, "Dude, there is no one home." I kinda chuckled when I said it, but in my mind I was really confused. My friend then said, "But I saw you when I looked in the window, and I saw your bed move, as if you were getting off the bed, and you turned your bedroom light on and then off." Again, I assured him that no one was home. So we made our way through the neighborhood, and we were getting really close to the house, and my friend says, "Look man, if you don't want to hang out, just say so, but don't leave me here hanging outside." He truly believed that I was inside the house at this point, and he was getting frustrated. He literally thought I was lying to him. So I told him just wait there, and that I was about to pull up to the house. Our house was second from the corner, and as we rounded the corner, I saw him waiting in the driveway, and his Honda was on the side of the street. When he turned and saw me in the passenger seat, he turned and walked to his car. He got in and drove off. He didn't even wait for me to get out of the car, and he had hung up the phone. I didn't talk to him till the next day, and he was pretty spooked about it. He kept asking me what it was. What did he really see? He made it clear that he saw a figure or silhouette in my room, and as he stepped back and looked in the window, he saw my bedroom light flicker on and off. I kept telling him that I didn't know. I tried not to think about it because I lived in that house and I slept in that room, and I was already trying my best to ignore everything that was going on as it was. I got good at it eventually. That house was really strange, and I didn't realize it until we moved out. I had friends tell me that they would feel something in the house, or one friend that told me that he was afraid to go to my restroom because he didn't like going through the hallway to get there. I had many strange encounters, and especially dreams, but whatever was in that house stayed there. This happened in 2010, and I still talk to my buddy to this day, and we often talk about this incident around a bonfire, along with our other paranormal experiences that we've had. From Houston, Texas, y'all be cool and be safe. As we come to the end of this edition of Midweek Mysteries, I'd like to say thank you to all of you for tuning in and supporting the podcast. And a special thank you goes out to Alex, Becky, Tori, and J-Man for writing in and sharing their experience with all of us. If you'd like to share your thoughts or a similar experience with one of tonight's storytellers, please email me, and I'll be sure to forward your message onto them. If you've witnessed something unexplainable and would like to have your story shared on the podcast, please contact me at paranormalmysteriespodcast@gmail.com or visit us at paranormalmysteriespodcast.com and click on the Tell Your Story link. All of our contact information can be found in the show notes. Until next time, I hope you all have a safe and healthy rest of the week, and we'll see you back here on Sunday with our next full-length episode. From all of us at Paranormal Mysteries, thank you for listening, and please remember, don't wait for the unknown to come to you. Get out there and find it.